We're here with Mike Dewine at David Hill's Fundraiser, and he's agreed to answer a few questions for the Stark County Political Report. And the first one, Attorney General Dewine, is that you've really had a storied career as a politician and as a government official. Just kind of looking back now, is this the pinnacle of your career, running for governor?
Well, I think you always have to look to the future, and I think the voters of Stark County, the voters of Ohio will pick a governor who has a vision of where the state needs to go. I've always been kind of a problem solver. Back when I was in the state Senate, I wrote Ohio's first really tough drunk driving bill. That made a difference. In the Attorney General's office, we've gone after these old rape kits that were sitting around, and we've tested now well over 12,000 of them with matches in 38%. And so being able to see the results of that is something that really motivates me. This is a great state. We've got a lot of natural things in this state that make us special. We have abundance of water. We now have the ability to get out of the ground, the natural gas in abundance. So, we're physically located. Within 600 miles up here, you got probably about 60% of the population. So, a lot of good things going on. I think there's a couple challenges that we face. And one of those challenges is the drug problem. As I talk to employers, as I travel around the state, one of the big concerns they have is that they can't find anybody to work. They can't find anybody that can pass a drug test. Or if they can pass a drug test, they can't find someone who has, the requisite skill set. So we have, I think, a real challenge. And the one thing that we're really not doing in Ohio very well is prevention. I believe that we have to start in kindergarten, do something that's age appropriate every single year. Every year do something that in the curriculum that is age appropriate and is also proven to actually work to make a difference, to change outcomes.
Would that be a signal to people who work in the field that under Governor Dewine there would be less money for treatment?
No, it certainly would not mean there would be less money for treatment. In fact, I think with prevention, ultimately, you're going to need less treatment. You're going to have fewer addicts in the long run. And prevention is not very expensive. This is something that I believe can be worked into the curriculum. It can be worked into science curriculum. It can be worked into health curriculum. We're going to let the schools figure out exactly how to do that. And there may be some cost involved, but we don't think the cost is very great. We think it can be worked into the current curriculum, and the current teachers can certainly do that.
And then was there a second?
The second problem, I think, with jobs is that we have people who are growing up many times in very difficult situations. People who are growing up in poverty, people who are growing up in homes that are, frankly, dysfunctional homes. And we have to reach these kids. These are kids that have the right to have an opportunity to live a middle-class life, to live the American dream, however they envision that American dream. And so I think one thing that we have to do is really, focus on these kids. A lot of them are in our inner cities, but they're frankly everywhere in the state. I've gone around and looked at different schools that work, different schools that were really making a big difference in these children's lives. And I've come to a couple conclusions. There's good news and bad news. The good news is we now really know what works. We kind of know what type of school will have an impact on these kids' lives. The bad news is we're not reaching enough of them. We don't have enough of those schools. And we have too many schools, frankly, where kids are languishing. So I think, we have to focus on these kids. We have to focus on giving them a chance. The other thing we have to do is to do a better job in pulling together, and some communities are doing a very good job, but pulling together our two-year colleges, our community colleges, and the business community. The same thing with our career centers, our high school career centers and the business community, so that they're training young people for jobs that really do exist, and that there actually are jobs at the end of that training. And we're making good progress in this, but I think we can do better.
Now to touch on a few issues that are near and dear to the heart of Stark Countyans. And one of them you touched on earlier this evening was local government funding. The president of Canton City Council, a gentleman by the name of Alan Schulman, Democrat, just really kind of goes off, which you rarely see from an elected official, about the cuts that have taken place since Governor Kasich took office. Of course, the Ohio General Assembly has been there, controlled by, in the supermajority way, by Republicans. With Mike Dewine as governor, more of the same, or is there going to be a change for the Alan Schulmans of Stark County and of Ohio to say, hey, relief is on the way?
You know, I started my career as a county prosecuting attorney, and so I worked at the local county level. I understand what local communities face, and as I said tonight in my speech, I really think that the place where we solve most of our problems is at the local level, whether it's our local school, whether it's our local township, village, city. And so, you know, I'm going to be a governor who understands the importance of local government. I think I shouldn't be in a position to start making a bunch of promises at this point as far as where the budget's going to go. It looks like to me we're going to face a very difficult budget when I become governor. We don't know exactly what Congress is going to do in regard to Medicaid, but it would appear that Congress will cut back on Medicaid somewhat. Particularly in regard to the expansion in Medicaid. So it very well could be we have a lot fewer dollars to deal with at the state level. But you know, we have to get control of that spending. We have to try to make those dollars go further. And you know, if we can do that, we hope that there will be money there, you know, for the local communities. I understand that local government has been hit. They've been hit by money being taken away from them, state and local government fund. They've also been hit very hard by this drug epidemic. You know, he's talked to the EMS director, the fire chief, and you know, they have a lot of runs for people who are overdosing. That happens in virtually every department in the state. Those are not cheap. That costs money. We can see in our county jails that are really our detox centers today, that costs money. So local government is really being slammed by this drug epidemic.
Now, on Monday, I talked to Joe Schiavone, Democratic candidate for governor, and specifically asking whether or not he was willing to dip into the rainy day fund. And he actually said yes, and he wants to take 10% of that and apply it to the opioid problem. Are you open as governor to dipping into the rainy day fund? And like President Schulman, one of the things he says is that the localities lost about $500 or $600 million in local government funding various ways. He says, you know, we got over $2 billion in Ohio in the rainy day fund. Why doesn't the state, now that it's made whole on its reserve, restore that to local governments? Would you be open to that?
Well, I think that's a hypothetical question. I'm not going to answer because we don't know exactly where the budget's going to be when I take office. But, you know, that money is there. We obviously don't want to dip into it unless we have to. But I will say that, you know, if you look at this opiate crisis, it is a crisis. It is horrible. I think there needs to be more of a sense of urgency as we approach this problem. You know, if you looked at, imagine if 10, 12 people today were killed, let's say in Athens, Ohio, by a terrorist. And imagine if tomorrow there's another 12 or 13 that are killed in Stark County, and then we go on. You know, we would be up in arms. But that's really what's happening. We're losing that many people, not to terrorists, but we're losing that many people to this opiate epidemic. And so I think there needs to be more of a sense of urgency. And part of what I've been trying to do is to, you know, talk to the people of the state of Ohio in different communities and talk about this problem because it is just a huge, huge problem. I got to go.
Oh, real quick.
One last one?
Yeah, last one.
Okay.
As Attorney General, you've been a real friend of land banks. And land banks, we have one here in Stark County. There's a great one up in Cuyahoga County. And you, through your office as Attorney General, got millions of dollars through mortgage settlement. to help land banks. The concern that I'm hearing, and of course Alex Sumbar, the Stark County Treasurer, who's part of your campaign, has done a terrific job here in Stark County with the land bank. But I interviewed him recently, and there is some concern about funds drying up for after I think 2019 for land banks. As governor, what's your commitment to making land banks sustainable?
These land banks have done a very, very credible and good job, and they're very important to different communities. And I've urged communities to actually form these land banks. I mean, we were able to take mortgage settlement money, $70 million, and send it to local communities. And if a county had a land bank, the money went there to tear down these old abandoned homes. Sometimes they're not that old, but they're abandoned, they're falling apart, and they're really are a cancer eating at the core of many of our communities. So I'm a big fan of land banks, and I will certainly do whatever I can to keep them going.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike Dewine, Attorney General of the state of Ohio and Republican candidate for governor.